Hello, I'm Peter Temes. I'm one of the founders and academic leaders of the Summer Great Books program. And I'm here, and boy, grateful to be here to talk just a little bit about literature and about what we do in our program and why talking about literature is so important to creating a more ethical society. Now, a great American poet is named Walt Whitman, and boy, Walt Whitman had lots of critics, and one of the ways they would criticize Walt Whitman would be to say, Whitman, you are filled with contradictions. So he wrote in one of his poems, do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. And we take that as a great entry point in working with students about what it is to be who you are. We all contain multitudes. We all contain different versions of ourselves. And we have the opportunity to aspire to the best versions of ourselves. Not to be who we aren't, but among the many versions of who we are. The quiet me, the bold me, the brave me, the kind me. We have the opportunity to challenge ourselves and challenge each other, to look in the mirror and even to turn to your friend and to say, there's a version of you that is so good and so caring and so kind. Bring that version of you forward, right? I am large. I'm filled with contradictions. I contain multitudes. And among those multitudes, there are those versions of myself that give more, that help make other people better, that are less afraid, that are readier to reach out. Whitman also wrote, when I give no small charity. When I give of myself. The versions of ourselves that are the most giving of ourselves, that reach out to others, that speak but also listen, that note, that notice, that care about everyone around us, being in the middle of his or her own story and own struggle. And that allow us, the versions of ourselves, that allow us to be the better friend, to be the listener as well as the storyteller, to be the one who says, I care about you and I want to know more about you. I want to hear your story. If we begin in our conversations, we begin in the days that we are together. If you begin in the day that you're sharing with each other right now, by hearing more, by listening more, by wanting to hear more of the story of the person next to you, then we become larger and better in that great sense that Whitman shares with us. And we arrive, I think, to a better place. And we get there often through the story of the person beside us, the story in the book we read, the story in the great poem. And the great poem, the greatness, might be something small. Just like that person next to you might be the most modest, but in that modesty, the most profound. Equally, the great literature might be the most modest bit of language that can sing us a song or tell us a story or lift our hearts in a way that helps us connect. William Carlos Williams, one of my favorite poets, might be one of those writers who gives us a text that's small and lovely, but can really help us hear more, connect more, and care more with each other. So one of the thoughts I'd like to leave you with is that the incredible power that literature brings us and that we can bring to literature is really the power of dialogue, right? Of what we say and what we hear, and of people who come together, often from very, very different places, and use stories as a way to discover how much they have in common and how much they need each other. So one of the stories that we've read many summers in our program here in the U.S. is actually by one of the great Indian writers, Rabindranath Tagore. I'm sure many of you know the story. It's called The Kabuliwala. And the center of the story is this big rough man who might be a little frightening, who finds his way into the home of a very elite family. And the 5-year-old girl in that family becomes his friend. And they talk. They care about each other. They share stories. And as that short story works to its end, each of these two characters goes his and her own way. They were together for a moment, and then they continue in the direction that each is almost destined to go to because of who they are. But the fact of their connection changes them. The fact that they've had those conversations makes everything else that happens, which might be expected, more than what's expected. It makes the life they live more connected to people who are different from them, to people whom they care about, and to the very ideas that weave together to make up their society. By having those conversations with each other across some lines, across some barriers of culture, by having those conversations, they understand the world and its textures and its sounds and its accents and its many stories more deeply. And they do care about each other across those boundaries in a way that makes our whole society stronger. And that's our challenge. That's what we can all do. We can all aspire to understand the stories of the people around us and the people perhaps not close at hand, but separated from us by some social barriers, to know that those people have stories that we have to hear, and they have to hear our stories too, and we have to make those connections so that we can understand ourselves and understand the world and make more of those human connections that really make life rich and deep and true. That's a mission that we share and that literature helps guide us toward. Thank you so much.